Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and talking about this game, Rebel Scum, the Rebel Scum role-playing game, and it has like a subtitle up top, an anti-fascist space opera. So I want to start by giving a thank you to the company, Ninth Level Games, who sent me this along with a lot of the other games in their Polymorph game line. Polymorph is the game mechanics system they use to run most of their games. All of their games are designed by Chris O'Neill, and I want to thank them for sending me this game to be able to check out and play games with and review. Now, before we get too into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's also a link to my Teespring store if you're in a position to and like to buy some Board Game Captain merch. I've got t-shirts like this one over there that says I drink and I game, it's what I do, and it's got a mug of beer and a D20 on it. I've also got others and mugs over there, so check it out. I've also got a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and like to support the channel. Link to my Patreon in the description down below. All right, so I'm going to start by saying this is going to be, of the ones I've read so far, probably the least positive I will have been on one of the Ninth Level Games role-playing games. I'm not a huge fan of this. I know a lot of people will sometimes. I mean, I have some people who like to watch the stuff where I get negative just to see where I'm at on things. But some people do get, a little upset when I'm negative on something that someone spent a lot of hard time and hard work on designing. So for you people who don't like that, I'm going to put a link up above to one of the previous games I have covered by Ninth Level Games. And I'll put a link to both of the ones I've previously covered, which were Mazes and The Very Good Dogs of Chernobyl. I'll put them both in the description down below so you can check those out, because I was very positive on both of those. I really liked both of those games a lot. So I will direct you to them if you want to watch something far more positive. Also, I want to say, now I was expecting a lot of references to Star Wars in here, being that obviously Rebel Scum is a Star Wars reference. They even use the font from the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, which actually was originally released under the name just Star Wars back in the 70s. They use the same font. So obviously I was expecting that. I guess I didn't notice when I first looked at this, the whole anti-fascist space opera thing, which even if I'd have noticed that, I may not have really got that there was going to be a lot of references to modern politics in here, which I was not expecting. So first off, the book itself is written with a heavy, specific political viewpoint, and specifically says that if you are a right-winger, this game is not for you. So if you are watching this right now and you very heavily identify by your political viewpoint, and that happens to be right-winger, turn this video off now. This game is really not for you. It specifically spells that out in the game, and there are things in here that you probably would find offensive the way they're worded. I'm a little annoyed about how much there is politics in here myself, because I try to keep my channel free of politics, and also because just looking at the cover again, I was just thinking this was going to be Star Wars reference. So that's going to be one of my first negatives. Now, because I'm not going to be too positive on this, I'm going to gloss over the system really quickly. Now, the system is very similar to a lot of the other polymorph games. Each character, class, and role, you choose a class, which allows you to have access to edges, which tell you things that you're going to be good at, and you pick a role, which tells you a die type use. The system is still just as good as it was in the others, and I do like that about it. You pick a die type, a D4, a D6, a D8, or a D10. You roll that for everything. If you have advantage, you will get to roll 2 dice and get the better of the 2 dice. If you have disadvantage, you roll 2 dice and have to succeed on both of them. It's the same basic polymorph system that's in the other games. Now, this is set up fairly similarly to the other role-playing games, where you've got an interspersing of little bits about the universe, as well as game rules, kind of, back and forth, interspersed throughout this zine-sized book. Now, this is a glue binding book. I am not a huge fan of the glue bindings. I've had some bad experiences with them coming apart, but these are very affordable little, books that they sell here. So that is, does offset the issues I have with the binding a little bit. Okay, but this review is going to be a little more freeform than I normally do because of me not being as positive on it. All right, so again, my first big negative is the insertion of modern politics. And I'm not going to talk about politics in this review. I don't talk about politics on my channel. If you comment down below anything about modern politics, I'm going to delete the comment. This is just going to be about the game. Don't want to discuss politics. I find gaming to be a great way to escape. I like to use it for escapism from the hellscape that is the modern world outside my window. Regardless of which side of the spectrum you're on, I'm pretty sure you can agree with me that the modern world has become, especially with political discourse in the United States, has become a hellscape. So I don't like it when games insert modern politics into the game, especially when you have a game that really the theme doesn't look like it should. Now, I was expecting all of the references to Star Wars in here because it's a Star Wars themed game, but I wasn't really expecting the large amount of references, and there's a lot to modern politics. One of the things I noticed was about 3 different times they referenced a good deed that you could do was handing out water to people waiting in line to vote. Now, again, this is supposed to be a parody kind of, or a tongue-in-cheek reference to the Star Wars universe. There would be no voting in the Star Wars universe, at least during the time period of the original trilogy, once the Emperor takes over, which is kind of what this is supposed to more be a reference to rather than the prequels, because by that time period, the Emperor has dissolved the Senate. You hear that in the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope. The Senate has been dissolved, so there's no voting for anyone. You just have an emperor. You don't vote for an emperor. They have turned it into a fascist dictatorship. So that reference has no place in something that's about the Star Wars universe and is really just too much about the real horrible political situation, again, outside our windows, which I personally didn't appreciate. Now, I get that also when you're reading this and you're doing your own game, you can avoid that kind of references completely. You can just, get rid of all of that. But the thing is, this world, I guess they're kind of assuming you already know everything there is to know and everything you need to know about the Star Wars universe itself, except that, they change it ever so slightly. And like, for instance, instead of being a galaxy-wide universe that you are solar system jumping, they make this a single solar system that you're fighting over. So it's changed enough, whereas a lot of the groups and a lot of the people are definitely obviously based on characters and groups from the Star Wars universe. They're all changed ever so slightly, and there's not a lot of story actually in here on the new universe, the slightly different universe. I mean, you can, I guess, really make it all yourself, but that makes it very much a self-service sort of book, and I wasn't really expecting that. I was either expecting it to just sort of be like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it's Star Wars, and have nothing, or have a fully fleshed out universe. And it kind of takes this weird middle ground, which actually, in my opinion, kind of hurts this book more than it helps it. I found it a little odd because they give you enough of the universe to realize that it has been significantly changed from the source material that this is obviously based on, but then not enough to flesh it out in any meaningful way. The other thing I had an issue with is there's a lot of things rules-wise that are kind of glossed over in here, where because I've read a couple of other role-playing games using the polymorph system, I did understand how to do it. But if this is the first book you've read using the polymorph system, I think there's a few different areas you might have been lost in, like, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I use this system? So that actually makes, in my opinion, this one of the weaker entries in the whole polymorph line that I've read so far. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little disappointed in this book. Some positives, though. Let's go back on some positives. I love the art style. I love that they went with, whenever they're talking about a character, it looks like one of the old Kenner action figures on a card back. That's a cool idea. The actual character sheet is supposed to be the back of the old toys. I love the idea that the toys are your figures for the game, and you could almost have your players using old action figures if you still had some around to represent them, even though there's no, map system or actual system that uses figures for this game. It's in feeling much closer to The Very Good Dogs of Chernobyl, in that it's very theater of the mind, very abstractly done. But this is a book that, after reading it, now, I mean, I was willing to overlook my first big negative of all the politics in here. Because I was thinking to myself, as I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh, okay, I can overlook that, because when I'm running my game, I wouldn't put a bunch of modern day politics in it. I would make it much more about Star Wars, where, yes, there are references to politics in Star Wars, but they're done in a much more abstract way, much more low key in the actual movies. And I was like, yeah, I can overlook that. But the game itself also didn't actually make me feel like I wanted to play it. Like, I read through this, and like I said, the very light way they do the universe was kind of meh to me. And again, also, I have to say that the way they explain the rules in here being a little different than they are in some of the others. For instance, so the way they went over how you run spaceships in here was done so fast. It was like a blink and you miss it moment. And you get an extra die. It says you get an extra die, but doesn't explain which, if you play the other games, you know that anytime you have a situation like this where you get an extra die, you roll both, and usually you take the better of the two. That's generally how it goes. It doesn't actually explain that. So, like, the way it says here is just says you get a die for the spaceship and you get a die for the character, and you roll them both. Okay, then what? Do you add them together? It doesn't tell you. So I found that a bit, problematic. Again, I knew how to do it only because of the other games in this series. Yeah, this is going to be a fairly short review because I'm not going to recommend this one. Now, you know what? I'm not going to recommend this one regardless of the politics. It's not just about the politics. Regardless of which side of the political spectrum you're on, that actually doesn't come into the reasons why I'm not recommending this game. It's just quality-wise, it's not on par with the other games in this line. Now, me, myself, outside of gaming, it doesn't matter whether I agree with the politics that are in here or not. I just resent modern politics being inserted into a game that is about anything other than modern politics, which this is not. It's a game about Star Wars, so inserting a lot of modern politics into it annoys me. It doesn't even matter if I agree with them or not. But also, on top of it, it's just not as well put together or well presented as some of the other games in their line, and this is one I feel like I have to give a pass to. I would say that I would not recommend this one. I'm going to give Rebel Scum 4 stars out of 10 because, unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this one. This is one I actually, even at only 74 pages, had trouble getting through because I didn't like how it was put together and presented. Yeah, I feel bad, but you know what? Again, links in the description down below to a couple other games from this company that I rated much higher. Also from this designer, Chris O'Neill, same designer. The Very Good Dogs of Chernobyl and Mazes, which, spoiler alert, I love both of those games. I still love both those games. If you see these guys at a convention, I would say pass over this one. Pick up either The Very Good Dogs of Chernobyl or Mazes, depending on whether you are interested in playing a horror-themed game about dogs fighting Cthulhu monsters in the ruins of Chernobyl, or if you're interested in playing an old-school fantasy dungeon crawler done with a modern kind of game system. Those two games are great. But unfortunately, this one I'm going to have to give a pass to. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns either on this video or on this game, feel free to put them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review of a role-playing game product and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.